Speaking of RFK and autism, he now has made the wild claim that he has never seen an adult with what he is describing as full-blown autism, meaning nonverbal and not toilet trained. That's his word, not mine. Take a listen to RFK dispensing this invaluable wisdom to Sean Hannity on Fox News this week.
Anybody with common sense, Sean, would notice that, because the autism, this epidemic, is only happening in our children. It's not happening in people our age. And if it was better recognition, you'd see it in 70-year-old men. And I'll say this, I want to be very careful when I say it, because I've never seen a person with full-blown autism. I've seen many people with Asperger's and, on the spectrum who are my age. I've never seen anybody with full-blown autism. That means nonverbal, non-toilet trained. It's that you don't see these people walking around a mall because they don't exist in our age. Or they're very, very rare. They do exist, but they're rare, so rare that I've never seen one.
There you go. If I said to you, Bobby, I never see quadriplegics at the gym, would you say, well, they must not exist then, because I don't see them at the gym? I think you get a little bit of the idea as to how ignorant, dangerous, and flat out wrong this is. It's like, gee, Bobby, I wonder why you don't see 70-year-old nonverbal people who can't use the bathroom by themselves walking around the mall. What a mystery. Adults with severe autism often live in care homes. They often are at an age, 70-year-olds, where their parents, who are often the primary caretakers for much of their lives, are no longer around. So the adults with severe autism that he's suggesting don't exist are living in support facilities, or they are with caregivers. Many have lower life expectancy. They're not out, mainlining beef tallow at a fast food restaurant with RFK Jr. Doesn't mean they don't exist. Means you're looking in the wrong places. Go to a care facility, talk to a specialist, walk into any autism support center in the country. RFK seems to think that the lack of severely disabled autistic adults in his personal bubble is proof that they don't exist. It's not just ignorant, it's vile. And by the way, even he admits that he's met people on the spectrum. Cool. Well, then, so what's your point? Because when people talk about the rise in autism diagnoses, they're not talking about exclusively severe cases being created out of thin air. What we're talking about is broader and better diagnostic tools. So girls, for example, are sometimes more difficult to diagnose with autism because it presents differently. Adults, anybody who's high functioning and has sort of evaded the diagnosis for a long time. People with ADHD-like symptoms, but it's not actually ADHD. It's sort of lower on the spectrum autism. That's most of the growth. It's not this secret wave of completely incapacitated people. The number of infantile or severely disabling autism cases is basically flat. The rise is improved screening and expanded definition. And the same guy that's parroting the vaccines cause autism stuff for years now is actually confused about the data that his own lies help to distort. Think about that. The vaccine, that's not super clear. Let me explain it. The vaccine autism link has been debunked by decades of studies. But in comes Bobby Kennedy Jr. using the absence of severely disabled adults at his dinner parties as evidence of what exactly? If he's going to lead a health agency, he should start by learning how autism actually works. And bonus clip, he also seems confused about ADHD, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, and other conditions, all of which he is now calling injuries.
And these are a broad category, the ones that Marty mentioned, like ADHD, the neurological disorders, ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, tics, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, and autism. All of these are injuries that I never heard of when I was a kid. They were not part of the nomenclature. They weren't part of the dialogue.
Yes, many were simply not well understood at that time. He's 70 years old. 65 years ago, when he was a kid, medicine was different. That's true.
There was zero spent in this country treating chronic disease when my uncle was president. Today it's about $1.8 trillion annually. It's bankrupting our nation.
And think about how stupid such a statement is. He's comparing the raw dollars spent on conditions that we are only more recently getting better at diagnosing. He's comparing it without inflation adjusted numbers. He's comparing it to a time when there were fewer people living in the United States. And he's comparing it to a time when a lot of these conditions were not as well understood. Of what value is it to say $1.8 trillion? It's just a big number meant to confuse. It doesn't account for anything at all.
74% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. How are we going to maintain our global leadership with such a sick population? We have all these autoimmune diseases, these exotic diseases. And again, I never heard of juvenile diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's disease, and 100 others.
So listen, he's mixing a bunch of stuff, and usually there is like a kernel of truth with a lot of these things. Some of what he's mentioning is lifestyle related, and we've got to deal with that. We have millions and millions of Americans living increasingly sedentary, unhealthy lifestyles and feeding themselves highly processed food all the time. That's a problem. There's no question about it. Starting to go into calling these conditions injuries and saying nobody had these 65 years ago when I was a kid, that's not science, that's propaganda. And it's hard to think of someone worse to be in this position. Truly tragic stuff. On the bonus show today, a 60 Minutes executive producer has resigned, citing a loss of independence in the aftermath of a Trump lawsuit. It's getting bad over there. A jury has found that the New York Times did not libel former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin. And finally, the Supreme Court seems likely to allow religious families to opt out when there are LGBT-themed stories in school. What is their potential justification and what will the impact be? Is there a slippery slope here? All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpacman.com. Remember that my book, The Echo Machine, now a multi-week New York Times bestseller, is available everywhere that books are sold. We are pushing slowly towards 1,000 Amazon reviews. We are at 961. If you've gotten the book, please review it, help us get there. And finally, make sure that you are getting our newsletter. You can go to davidpacman.com to sign up. You can email info@davidpacman.com and say, David, get me that newsletter. Or you can go to davidpacman.substack.com. See you on the bonus show. After researching, writing, refining, The Echo Machine, my book is finally out. This is not just a book about how American politics got so broken. It's also about what's happening right now and what we can still do to stop things from getting worse. Trump's been back in power. The results have been even more catastrophic than many feared, with targeting of political opponents and gutting democratic institutions, laying the groundwork to even further consolidate power. But the thing is that none of this is inevitable. The same forces that brought us here can be countered if we understand how they work and what to do about them. And that's what the Echo Machine is all about. Some say that without corporate media backing, books like this can't succeed. I think we can prove them wrong. You can get the Echo Machine right now at davidpacman.com/echo on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, Kindle, or by calling any local bookstore and asking them to order it. This book is more important than ever. If you care about what happens next, and I do, check out the Echo Machine today at davidpacman.com/echo.